For Asgard, as many of us may know from whatever source has ever told you, they've always said that life started in Africa. And I think that is true or partially true. Again, I don't have the facts. This is just me talking. I don't have any documentation. This is not me trying to prove anything. It's just me talking. I'm just talking. I don't think, human life, all started in Africa. I don't think I don't think we all came from that one or two people in Africa. I don't think that happened. What I think in at least one or two other or three, four other places, life was forming around the world. I can't say where, I can't say how, but I just can't fully accept that life only started on one continent or just one place. I'm just not getting it. As we know, or some people may know, is that there were natives here living in the North Americas, or so-called South Americas, the Caribbean. There were always been people living here. I don't know exactly what happened in history. I don't want to take a guess of what happened. I'm just questioning things. I'm just asking questions. I mean, if life all started in Africa, what did they use to get from Africa to North or South America? Because from what we know, the oceans are rough. The oceans are rough. So there's no way they're going to be paddling a canoe, a raft. I don't think, I shouldn't say there's no way, but I don't think that they're going to be paddling a canoe, a kayak, over the raging ocean. Maybe they did have these big ships back then. I don't know, but even with these big ships, a lot of them struggled. Sailing over the Atlantic, even the Pacific. Some of them didn't know where north or south or east is or west is. So how did people from Africa, from I don't know what year, how did they all just get from Africa to North and the so-called North and South America? I feel that there always have been people here in the North and South America. I'm not saying that they both originated at the same time, but I think there have always been people around the world. How? I don't know. I can't answer that. I just don't think that we all just came from one continent or country. And there's also I'm not sure if it's a theory or if it's a known fact or whatnot, but I think it's called Pangea, where all the continents were once placed together, and then somehow they just split apart. Maybe that's how people got from North America, got from so-called Africa to North and so-called South America. Everything was one continent. That's what they say. So maybe they were able to walk from into all continents before the Pangea hit. Maybe. And I don't want to get too biblical, but even in the Bible, we hear of these so-called prophets preaching around the world. When you hear them preaching in Egypt, Israel, Greece, Rome, there may have been Asia, but we hear them preaching all around there. But we never once have heard them, not to my knowledge, preaching in North or so-called North or South America. So here's a so-called prophet that wants everyone to bow and worship him or it or whatever. But they are not even preaching all over the world, though. So if you're not preaching all over the world, no one's going to know what you're talking about. Who's talking? No one's going to know this information. But then, these so-called religions, they want everyone to worship these things. But even in the Bible, again, they weren't everywhere. This Jesus guy and the prophets, they were not everywhere. Why were they not in South and North America? Why didn't they not build a ship and travel the whole world? Do you understand what I'm saying? So I don't know. There's something, I don't know, that they may or may not be telling us about this world. Obviously with the Bible, it was created in that one Pacific area for Pacific people. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of question with the Bible of when it was made or whatnot, and if have so many copies of it. But again, I probably shouldn't have brought it up because it's confusing. But anyways, all I'm trying to say is I don't want to accept 100%. And this is just me talking. And I'm not saying everyone should listen and believe what I say. Again, I don't really care. But I don't accept that every race, every nationality came from Africa, so-called Africa. I do accept that. Let me rephrase that. I do accept that somewhat, that all races have come from the so-called, black man, the melanated people. I just don't think... Isn't it possible that they were not just the only, so-called race around? Is it possible that the so-called black people were not the only black people around, and they were able to evolutionize and evolve into these races? Couldn't there be other, types of people during this time around the world? I really don't know. I really don't know. Well, again, I'm just asking questions here. Just asking questions. We have so many religions, cultures, so many countries around the world. So you're saying that only one race created every country, every nationality, every language, every race, every type of hair, every, shades of skin from one race. But we can see that there's a there are differences from race to race. There are natural differences from race to race. If you look at athleticism, excuse my pronunciation, the so-called, Americans, black Americans, are way athletic. They're more inclined. They have more poise compared to the average, average African. And you look at these Africans, a lot of them are not as, athletic. They don't have that natural poise. Sometimes you can just tell by the African and the so-called black American that their abilities are so different. The way they sing is different. Their hair is somewhat different. The way they talk, the languages are different. Their behaviors are different. Their lips, their facial features are different. Look at different countries in Africa. A lot of their facial features are very different from each other. Their hairs are different. The languages are different. And again, you can compare this to any race. A lot of every other race, all races, they have, I'll say unique characteristics about them. The so-called Asian, a lot of them, I'll say the average has black hair. They have like this white type of skin. And you can tell between the white man, the so-called white man, and the so-called Asian man, they're both like white skin, but you can tell their facial features are different. The way they move is different. You can tell the athleticism, the poise, their body movements are different. The strengths between the so-called white man and so-called Asian man, it's different. The average is different. Being able to grow facial hair is different. Heights are different. Body sizes are different. Their abilities, somewhat are different. All this is different from people, race to race, country to country. Compare even Russians to Ukrainians, Russians to Estonians, Turkish to Arabs, or Turkish to Iraqis or Afghans. They're different. A lot of things are different. So again, how can we all just come from one race, one set of people, and be this different? How? I think that we all didn't just come from one type of person. I think that there were multiple races in North America, so-called North America, so-called South America, so-called Europe, so-called Africa, so-called Oceania, so-called Asia. All around the world, maybe not at the exact same time, but man originated all around the world. Maybe they all had darker complexion, and over time they evolved. But I don't think, again, we came from just one place, one set of people. And you look at Africa, a lot of these countries are different. You can tell the difference between a Somalian and a Nigerian. You can tell the difference between a South African and a Niger. You can tell the difference between those from Sierra Leone and those from Kenya. They look different. Some of these cultures and places, these people from Pacific countries, they all have like similar facial characteristics. But you compare them to other countries, they're different. Some are the same, some are different. So bottom line is this: I don't think we just came from one place. You look at history, that the Mayans are already in so-called South America. The natives were already in North America. Hear about, the melanated people were the so-called rednecks, were the so-called Indians. We heard that the melanated people were in Europe. The melanated people were in Asia. They're all over the place. Another thing as well, Australia, the natives in Australia. Speaking of Australia, they were different. You can look at them and be like, these are us Australian natives. The Samoans, these are Samoans. These are New Zealanders. These are from Hawaii. But you're saying that all these people came from one place. How did they get there? How did they get everywhere? I don't think we all just came from one set of people or one place. I think we originated all over, maybe not at the exact same time, but I think that we originated all over, maybe with darker complexion, again, with over time. We evolutionize and then we either colonize and et cetera. That plays a role too. But I mean, if we're all from one set of people, shouldn't we all look the same at the end of the day? Somewhat the same, somewhat similar at the end of the day? So many people, we all look different. The Jamaicans look different compared to the Barbadians or Bajans. Sorry, Bajans. Trinis look different than the other Caribbean places. And that's another thing with Trinis, Trinidad and Tobago, is that they're like black, like the so-called real black Trinis. But then there's like the Indian Trinis. Like these Trinis look like they're from India. And we all noticed that. And then some of them from Ghana as well, or Guyana, whatever. Some of them get mixed up with Ghana and Guyana. Some of them are from Guyana and Trini. They're like the brown Trinis. Where the hell did these people come from? Even in Jamaica, you have some like brown Indian Jamaicans who are like look like Indians. In Trini, you have like these Indian Trinis. And it's so easy to know the difference between a Indian Trini and a regular Indian person. Regular person from India. Because we know them by their characteristics, their facial features, their behavior, the way their poise, their language. I'm going to end there because I got things to do. I don't think that we all came from just one place, one set of people. I believe and I think that we came from all around the world. It may or may not be we all had darker complexion. I think it was a mix. It was a mix. It was a mix. But a lot of things happened and yada, yada, yada. Here we are today. But anyways, for Asgard.